an innocent hero turned into a vicious and bitter monster, and a victim to circumstance who only wanted to be the hero he was made to be. Hog and Scorched are a duo that was made by Jack Gore, but is currently owned by Draghi. A few people requested I talk about these two, so here we are. These two actually have a pretty interesting story. There are slightly different variations of Hog and Scorched, but they mostly tell a similar story with a few differences. We'll focus primarily on the recent iteration, which is told through a series of pictures, while also summarizing the old story. The main difference is the current iteration of Scorched, as this was his old design and this is his current one. Personally, I love the new look, and I think it fits him like a lot better. The old one is pretty good, but this one is super intimidating. With that being said, let's delve into the lore of the dynamic duo, starting with Hog. Hog the Tenric. This is a Tenric, by the way. I didn't know that these things existed, to be honest, and despite their similar appearance to the hedgehog, they're not actually in the same family member group. They're not even related. Apparently, they're more closely related to manatees? Yeah, okay, I would have never expected that. Bit of a fun animal fact for you guys. He comes from a knockoff Sonic the Hedgehog game created by Giga. The premise of his game is the same as Sonic's. Fight alongside his friends Prowler and Fist. Wow, I mean, they didn't even try to hide it, but they do have pretty nice designs. Prowler and Fist having similarities to Tails and Knuckles, but being just different enough to where I'm like, huh, that's pretty cool. But they all get together and fight the evil Dr. Dross Mechanics, formerly known as Dr. Bio Yolkman Mechanic. You know, as funny as that name is, I am kind of glad they changed it. The direction of the current story is taking a bit of a serious direction, and I couldn't take Dr. Yolkman too seriously. Though, I guess that is just a direct copy of Dr. Eggman, so maybe it does work, who knows. Though this does take a dark turn when the creation of this knockoff world corrupted another world in horrifying ways, turning Sonic into a terrifying beast. That's right, this thing is the one and only Sonic the Hedgehog. How? Allow me to explain. Scorched is now the result of something going terribly wrong with his world. The story goes is that there was a Sonic 3 and Knuckles cartridge, but it was put into Giga's Switch and Play, and Sonic's world needed to be wiped in order for Hog's world to exist. Or so that's how it's told. Sonic was tossed into the void, and Hog was able to exist because of it. For some reason, Sonic was the only survivor of this, though. Only he was put into the void. Though Sonic wouldn't just fade away. His new home continued to contort and change his appearance along with how he viewed the world, and caused him to become the monster we know him as today. And as a result of this, he grew incredibly bitter. Seeing Hog thrive and keep his friends made him crave vengeance, even if it wasn't Hog's fault directly. He had everything taken away from him, and he'd have to take it back. So he needed to grab the power rubies, and with the power of the rubies, he would be able to go after Hog and tear away his world the same way his world was taken from him. Likely because he's being fully possessed. Whether he's conscious during this is unclear, but we kind of get a little bit of a hint that he may still have some control or is partially aware of it as the course of the story plays on. The series of pictures show Hog doing just that, taking out his friends one at a time. The first picture shows us Hog beating Prowler, and in the background, a shadow stands behind him in the same shape as Tails, saying, "Avenge me, Sonic." So this absolutely confirms that this is Scorch who has taken control of Hog's body, just as it was told in the original story. Though in this version, Scorch seems a bit remorseful, or perhaps Hog is still present but doesn't have control over his body. The next picture shows the shadow thanking Sonic. It says it can finally get its body back. So we know that this is Tails and that it's talking to Sonic directly, though it seems as if he's trembling, covered in blood, and tears are escaping from his eyes, almost as if he's being tormented. Let it be known that on the Sonic Oddities wiki, the picture says Hog killing Prowler, so that may reaffirm that this is indeed Hog, but something is clearly wrong with him. Tails says, Knuckles will be waiting for you at this universe's Angel Island. Get the gems and free us all. Which would play into the older story's narrative of collecting the Rubies of Power, which is what I believe are the Chaos Emeralds or Phantom Rubies, though this is answered within the next few slides. We then see what's happening on this universe's Angel Island, which is a fight between Hog and Fist with a shadowy figure of Knuckles in the background. Fist is absolutely destroying Sonic here until the demonic version of Knuckles grants Sonic the strength to win, speaking to him directly. How disappointing, Sonic. I thought you were faster than that, but you must not give up. Let me give you my strength. We see a ruby shatter, and the next slide is Scorched in his super form. This is Sonic after all, and it only makes sense that he has one. So we know that shattering this would grant him immense power. Though Fist is still putting up a good fight, which he's got to be pretty strong to be keeping up with Scorched here. This, however, doesn't last long. Scorched is the fastest being alive, and no one will stop him from achieving his goal. With a supercharged spin dash, he crashes into Fist, ending the battle instantly. Although it wouldn't end here, as there is still one person to be eliminated. A shadowy Eggman is now talking to Scorched. The dialogue reading as follows. The Phantom Ruby has enough for you to be transferred to the universe that replaced yours. The one that caused this. Although I despise you, we both will need to work together to fix all this. We'll meet again, Hedgehog. So we know he now possesses a Phantom Ruby and has one more person to take out, which is this universe's Robotnik, who is oddly referred to as Cabbage Man. Okay, I know that I said it was taking a serious direction, but thinking about it now, I refer to a Robotnik as Eggman half the time, and his name is frickin' Eggman. The silliness of the name kind of makes sense. Moving on, mechanics doesn't go down without a fight, having one of the coolest looking weapons, and the dialogue reading as follows. Farewell, Teneric. I would say it has been fun, but after years of you foiling my plans, I must say otherwise. Don't come back. And he fires a freaking massive beam at Scorched, trying to fry him entirely. Though I do find it interesting that he still believes that this is Hog. Well, there was no indication that it was anyone else aside from him taking a new appearance. Even he isn't fully aware of what's happening and hasn't pieced together that he may be possessed. Though, to the doctor's surprise, Scorched is left standing there. A tall, shadowy figure stands over the doctor as he questions how is this even scientifically possible. The doctor asks Scorched, what is he? And Scorched begins his monologue. What am I? They call me many names. Blue Blur, Speed Demon, Blue Devil, Speed, Hero, but you can call me Sonic the Hedgehog. And that's the last of the pictures telling the story of Hog and Scorched. Through the course of reading this, I realized that the current owner of Hog and Scorched likely won't do anything with them, making this the most recent iteration of the character and potentially the last one. Everything here, I believe, was drawn by Jack Gore and is the current story of them. If this story is the final iteration, then I think that's fair. It told the story it needed to and leaves room for speculation. Does Scorched ever find a way to take his world back? Or did he kill the new world for nothing? What happened to Hog in this story? Does he ever get a chance to fight back? Well, luckily, my friends, the full story tells us exactly what happens, at least the full old story. Fist and Scorched are fighting, and Fist pulls out the Power Ruby to try and gain the advantage, but something goes terribly wrong. Scorched had somehow managed to shatter the ruby, and with the crystal shattered, everything would come to an end due to the sheer amount of energy that radiated from it. Fist, as a result, dies, and only Hog and Scorched remain. They continue to argue, Hog asking how it was his fault Sonic's world came to an end. Sonic had been corrupted by the void, and after all was said and done, he felt ashamed. The Hedgehog took a glance at his hands, speaking out tears. I don't want to die alone. It was a little too late to feel remorse. The ball of energy had already reached Hog and Sonic, destroying them in the process. This would also affect the real world as the cartridge add-on overheated and corrupted, rendering them and the console useless, sealing the fate of Hog and Scorched. You would think this is where the story ends, but oddly enough, Scorched continues to live on while Hog has faded away. That's right, the story I just described to you is actually a prequel. Scorched had somehow survived the massive blast and is mostly being kept alive by his anguish and hatred. This is what is now known as Scorched Redux. This story is honestly one of the most interesting takes on a Sonic pasta, and the art that goes with it is absolutely amazing. I always find myself enjoying Jack Gore's art, and this story was really well put together. I may have done a poor summary of the story itself, so please check it out in the description. I promise you will not regret it. It's one of my favorite stories as it has a lot of depth and was going to have a lot of characters and lore to it. And the story to it is very long despite my very brief summary. The general idea is that Hog indirectly destroyed Sonic's world. Sonic becomes completely corrupted, takes over Hog's world. Sonic is left to be remorseful and think about what he's done. Hog is faced with also losing everything. These two are two sides of the same coin, and they both did it to each other, and it tells it in such a great way. So definitely give it a read if that's something that you're interested in. This is one of my favorite Sonic pastas, as I have said a billion times, but like usual, we're not done yet. We're going to talk about some media that Hog and Scorched have been a part of. And you may have noticed, I'm talking to you in VR chat. I was very surprised to find both Hog and Scorched as fully made VR chat models. Not just that, but Scorched is freaking massive, like taking up most of the space and changing your perspective by a lot. I wanted to do a quick mention of that as I thought this was pretty cool. To find something as niche as this in VR chat and be able to see yourself move around in a fully 3D environment as Scorched and Hog. No, not just that. 2 years ago, Jack Gore released a fully animated video relating to Hog. The animation here is really good, but the point of it was to announce its arrival to the FNF Sonic.exe mod that, well, never happened, as many of you know. But in the Sonic.exe restored FNF mod, there is a Hog and Scorched tweet showing our favorite duo getting the spotlight that was taken from them. I don't know if they took sprites from anywhere or took from the original song and made it longer, or just restored it. But these sprites don't look too bad, and I'm glad to see that they got put into something. It's also worth mentioning that Hog was going to get his own game at some point, but was cancelled later on. There's also a full universe of characters that were featured in Hog's world with full designs. These characters being Iron Hog, Holly Petals, Shade, Velvet, all of which I'll leave for you guys to decide who they are a knockoff of, and I'm willing to bet most of you will get it because it's pretty obvious. Let me know who you think who is who in the comments. There's also a ton of fan art, along with Hog crossing over with other beings in other universes. Here's one of Fatal Error sort of hogified, as it said, and that's only the start. While nothing may happen with Hog and Scorched in the future, these two have a very good story with a lot of good art and deserve a lot of love and will remain at the top of my favorite EXE list for a while. Thank you everyone so much for watching, subscribe, and remember, stay freaky!